Hi everyone, I'm Olwen Cade and this is Olwen Cade Living Soulfully Tuesday Night Live for the 8th of September 2020. Lovely to have you all here. Thank you for joining me, and we've got a really interesting topic tonight, one that is I think very relevant to a world that is certainly going very fast and has been for a very long time, about how we can look after ourselves and not give too much of ourselves away. I first became aware of this from outside of myself when I was a funeral celebrant. I started being a funeral celebrant in 2000, and I worked in the funeral industry as a celebrant, taking services for people for 15 years. And one of the things that came sharply into my focus, I wrote here that so many of it was something very insightful to me and alarming. I wrote down as my notes for this, which was quite, I looked at myself and I thought, am I doing that? Is that me? Should I take notes about this as I was watching these things play out? And I watched that so many young women were often the ones who were themselves, giving themselves away, were the ones that the services were for. Is that people would stand up at the service and say how wonderful they were and how they were always there for everybody and how I always had time for everybody and how there was always an open door at their house and they were on this committee and that committee and they were just totally used up. There was, that's my words, not theirs. That's my understanding for myself of what was going on. And I used to think, gosh, look at this picture. What is this about? They're talking about this person who has given so much of themselves to everyone else, and they're the ones who have died. And that was quite a revelation, because for me, I was always one of those people pleaser persons, doing things for everybody else all the time and rushing around. And I've talked about my gatekeeper personality, the part of me that let everyone in and used up all my resources, and I was always doing for everyone else, and I used to get sick quite a lot, and almost fatally sick on one occasion. So those things were quite eye-opening for me and made me stop and realise that perhaps I needed to look at that for myself. And if that's you, if that's what you're doing, then and you're finding that you are always putting yourself out there, and that you feel unrequited and not replenished, and that there's this emptiness, because for me there was this emptiness. There was something that was really, really missing from my life, and I realised that what was missing was me. That why I was doing all of this was that I didn't want to stop, because I didn't actually know who I was, and I didn't know what I wanted, and I didn't know how to look after myself. I didn't know how to care for myself. And if I stopped, I just had this feeling that everything would catch up with me and slam into me, and I wouldn't know how to cope with it, that I had to stop and look at all the things that I didn't want to look at. So that's my own personal experience of that, and everyone is different, and I'm not saying you're all going to be like I was, but that was my experience of it. And so it made me sort of stop and reel back and go, I have to be very careful what I do with myself from now on and become more self-aware. And that was a big part, and still is a big part, of my own spiritual journey, my own soulful journey. Now, I've made some notes, so I just want to refer to them. One of the things that's really interesting is this. I use this diagram quite a lot in my coaching technique, and I'm going to show it to you. Now, for those of you who are listening on podcast, because this gets the sound gets taken out of this and we put it up as a podcast after this is finished, I've got a drawing here, strange drawing, sorry about that, terrible at drawing, but it's a chalice, basically. It's a cup. Okay, I'm going to bring it over here a bit more. And the idea is that what we should do is that we need to fill our cup to overflowing, and that everything should flow down the outside. That's what we need to do. My cup runneth over, as it says. Okay. The thing is that this out here, what flows over here, is what you give away. You never give away from what's in here. but that's what we do. Now, most people function about here. That's it.
Third full.
Yeah, not even a third full. Sometimes even less than that. The further down that cup that you get, the further down there that you get, the less likely, the more likely you are to have health issues, mental health, physical health, spiritual health issues. And the problem with that is that you're running on really low energy, on fumes. And what you need to do is to be able to put some of that back, or all of that back if you can. Usually what happens, I'm going to put this down now, usually what happens is that it takes some event outside of ourselves, we think, to intervene, to stop us from doing that, to actually make us stop and have a look at what's really going on. Avoidance is a big one. No good boundaries, not having good boundaries set up. And that comes back to my gatekeeper part of myself. And I'm just going to reiterate the gatekeeper for those of you who haven't listened to the previous broadcasts. They were in the voices in my head were the gatekeeper. I talked about that. But the gatekeeper is that part of ourselves that sets good boundaries. And my gatekeeper was asleep. He would let anyone in, and you know, I was shut up in the tower, and he would just let anyone in, eat all the food, take what you want, everything's yours, have a nice time. And he would just go back to reading his paper. The sentries were all in the guardhouse, and they were all had a girl on each knee and playing cards, and they didn't care. And I had chronic agoraphobia. That was one of the canaries in the mine for me. I struggled with agoraphobia. I struggled with feeling safe outside in the world. So whenever I went to go out, they would all go, nope, you can't go out there, and they'd all jump to attention and rush and block my gate and go, you can't go out there because we can't keep you safe. So as I've said before, I got to the stage where I couldn't go to my letterbox or to my washing line a lot of the time, let alone try and do anything else. And it was in the, you know, the sort of middle, probably 2005, I think, 2006, that I really got to grips with that part of myself, and it was a struggle because I had to go out, I had to do things, I had to work, I had a life, and that had been going on for like a couple of decades that I had that problem. And so that was that personal boundaries thing, that I was giving away what I didn't have to give. Now, some people do it in the form of money. You know, they'll give people money, or they'll spend money, or they'll do things like that they don't actually have, just to try and mask what's really going on underneath. It can come through in the form of addictions. It can come through in the form of relationships. It can come through in the form of many things that we will manifest it outside of ourselves to try and get our own attention. That's really what we're trying to do. And so if you are one of those people who's giving everything away all the time, that your energy, your time, your love, your whatever else it is, and you're not actually getting anything back, then you have to look at what it is that you're trying to avoid. What are you trying to sort of mask, to hold away from yourself so that you actually don't ever have to look at that. It's really scary to try and look at it. It feels scary because often it's unknown. We don't quite know what it is, or we're not sure. And it's often buried under lots and lots of layers of life. You know, it's a bit like the bones of a dinosaur are buried under all the silt and the gold, and the oil is buried deeper and deeper as life has been layered on top of it. And so we have to dig really deep in order to do that. And that's what I found for my own personal work and for my coaching work, you know, in the Light Paths Journey work, is to help people to actually, you know, mine and down into that, and to go right down to the bottom, through the layers, looking at what's really going on, getting to the real core of what's actually happening for them, and why they have to constantly mask these feelings or incidents or whatever else it is that has made you or made us live our life by giving away what we don't have to give. Okay. Of course, the ultimate sacrifice is our life. And I know that I have at times in my life felt that I was so unhappy in a situation that the only way I could get out was to die. And there are numerous ways to do that. I did try in the 80s, early 80s, to take my own life. That's how bad it had gotten. And I went and got help for that. Thank goodness it never happened again, and I've never done that again. But then there are other ways to actually try. There is death while you're still alive, and then there is death, of course, which is the real death where you die and are not here anymore. So there are lots of ways. Getting sick, lots of ways of ending what goes on for you, without you actually looking at what's really going on. And I can tell you that by looking at it and looking in on what's going on for you and talking about it and getting help for it is the best thing that you can possibly do. And getting insightful help for yourself. Being prepared to look is the most important thing. Being willing, being courageous enough, being brave enough to actually look at yourself and go, why am I giving myself away all the time? Why am I giving away? What am I giving away? That's a really important one. I had to ask myself, what was I giving away all the time? What was it that I was giving? And really it was that I needed to feel needed. I needed to feel liked. I needed to feel loved. I was looking for safety and security. I was looking for some kind of assurance that I was okay, that I was a good person, and I was a worthy person by doing that. But the problem with that is that when you're doing that, you're looking outside of yourself. And all my years in theatre, I received many brickbats and bouquets, I used to call them, the criticism and the applause. And I learned from that neither mattered really in the end, because I could look at what I had done and I could see for myself where I had done well and where I hadn't. That's how it felt to me. So that was a very insightful way of being able to look, from within to see where I needed to do more and where I didn't. And then as I became more insightful, I then could carry that over into my personal life, because the theatre was personal, but I could carry that over in a much more conscious way, in a much more soulful, spiritual way into my everyday life, into the life outside of the theatre. I suppose the thing that I really want to say to you is that if you are, whatever you're doing, there are things to look for about whether what you're doing is uplifting you, whether you feel replenished by what you're doing, whether you feel joyful, do you feel energized by what you're doing? If you can answer yes to those in any way, shape or form, then you are doing something that's good for you. If you feel exhausted and drained and have to go and sort of sleep for a week after you've done something, after you've spent time with someone at your job or wherever it is, and you just feel exhausted, and almost like you think, oh, why did I do that? There's lots of different feelings that go with that feeling of having given yourself away. If you've done that and you feel good, if you've done something and you feel good, then you can go, actually, that is good for me. I feel good about myself when I do that. But if you don't, then you have to go, why am I doing this? What's in this for me? What is really going on here? Why am I doing this? And also the other thing is that, I used to do things that I would feel so good about and I absolutely loved. And then I would do other things that I just knew I dreaded and I didn't want to do them, but I would do them anyway. I didn't want to go to something. I didn't want to take part in something, but I would do it. I would push myself to go and do it. And then I would hate it while I was there, and I just wanted to exit and go home. And then I would get home and I'd just be like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Why did I say yes to that when I really wanted to say no? But the other side of it too was that I would say no when I really wanted to say yes. So I would say no to things that I really wanted to do, or I felt would be good to do because of my self-confidence was really low. And so instead of going, yes, I really want to do that, I would make an excuse and cut myself out of it and sabotage it so that I didn't get to do it. And then I would go off and do something I really didn't want to do. There are lots of formulas to this, as I've said, and you will be executing your own, and you'll be a master at it. I was an absolute master at being able to mask myself, mask my unhappiness, mask that I was exhausted, and actually it wasn't helping me, and it wasn't helping people around me. I'm not saying that I wasn't genuine in my life. I was just not happy, and I wasn't feeling that I was living a life that I felt proud of, or that I felt good about. Okay, so if you're feeling like that, then you need to take some time out. Now, it could be that you might have something come up tomorrow, let's say, or you might have something that's happening for you right now, and you feel you have to go and do it, or you're going to go and do it. And you need to stop and go, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? And then sit down with yourself, and if you can write it down, which is a really good thing to do. Write it down, you know. I'm doing this because, whatever it might be. Okay, so why am I doing that then? Why am I doing it for that reason then? Well, I'm doing it because of this and this and this. And if you keep asking why, like a child, you know how children used to go, why? What for? What are you doing that for? Why are you doing that? Then you need to go back and do that, okay? You need to go back and you need to be like that child and ask yourself really, really annoying questions until you are so sick of yourself that that's how you get to the bottom of it, okay? The thing about doing things out of obligation, John's just written this down for me to remind me, is that obligation breeds resentment, and resentment will make you very angry. It'll make you absolutely hate yourself and hate your own life. So if you're doing things that you resent, then usually there'll be obligation attached to that. Or if you feel obliged, there'll be resentment under that one. That's the next level. And then you'll start to hate yourself, and then things start really unraveling if you do that all the time. That energy has to go somewhere, and what we do usually is most people internalize that energy, and we push it down inside ourselves, down, and it ends up in our gut and our bowel and our organs and things, which is really bad. Now, the other thing that can happen too when we start to give so much of ourselves away and don't actually constantly replenish ourselves in a very, very positive way, is that from a soul's point of view, is that the soul powers the body. The soul is what's working me right now. It's what's looking out through my eyes and looking at you, and it's what's looking through your eyes and looking at me. It's what keeps us alive. And as I've said many times, in the funeral industry situation, we've seen many people who've died, and the thing that was keeping them going was the soul. Whatever was powering them isn't there anymore. And so what happens to us is it's not that we get sick and then our soul leaves, it's that our soul leaves and then we get sick. So when we become unhappy and when we become disconnected, which is all part of that unhappiness, and give too much of ourselves away and don't replenish ourselves and look out for ourselves, as we start to kind of send ourselves away, our energy starts to disappear out of our body, and then our body starts to go downhill. So the most important thing that we can do is the whys, of course, and the what fors and so on, but it's also to stop on a regular basis. Try it tonight, try it tomorrow, try it the next day, and stop and just do it even for a couple of minutes. Close your eyes and just stop and just go and just call yourself back in. Just do that. Just like, come back to me, come back right now, come into this place where you are in the present, haul yourself back in here. And in the doing of that, it just makes such a difference to how you feel. Even in just those few moments, a couple of moments of doing that, a couple of minutes of doing that, just stopping, closing your eyes, being quiet just for a moment. Your head will go crazy and just go, no, shh, quiet, and just bring yourself back in to the present moment. Call yourself back to where you are and replenish yourself that way. Because otherwise we end up fractured and we end up all over the place. And by doing that, it's like leaving, you know, a bit of your eyeball over there, and a bit of your ear over there, and a bit of your foot over there, and you know, it's like those toys, you know, they go boom and bust to bits, and the kids have got to put them all back together again, and that's what happens to us. But it happens to us energetically, and if we do too much of that, then we start to break down our body, and our body starts to get sick, and then we really do perhaps start losing parts of ourselves, literally losing parts of ourselves. We have to have them cut out, cut off, repaired, whatever else goes on, whatever else is going to go on. So that's a really important tool, to just bring yourself back to the present. When I take people on light path journeys, to look at what's going on for them, look at their issues, look what's happening for them, what they're really hiding way down underneath, is that one of the last things that we do is as I get them to go through the process of calling themselves home. And it's a process that I do with them. And it is a really powerful thing to do. Because you're not just, you haven't, if you think about it, if you look back just through this lifetime alone, and you think about all of the places and the times and the events and all the things that have taken place in the years of your life until now, and you consider all of the places energetically that you have left yourself, where you have you know, left parts of your energy, or you might be living in the past, looking back into your past all the time, or trying to project yourself into the future. I've said this many times, but I can remember as a child, you know, when my mother left my dad and we went from Nelson Creek to Timaru, and I was so brokenhearted, and I was so upset and lost and frightened and grief-stricken, and that I used to send imagine myself, take myself energetically in my mind back to Nelson Creek, back to the hotel, back to my friends, back to my horse and my dog. I would be there. I wanted to be there so much that I used to think that, you know, that perhaps those people over there would see some little sort of child figure wandering around. I mean, I think that now, not then, but now. I think, gosh, perhaps they used to see some childlike figure walking the halls of places, or walking around, and think that it was a ghost, but actually it wasn't. It was me, because I was so much there and not where I was. And because of that, because I was projecting myself somewhere else, and not being where I was there, I never felt really comfortable there, and life didn't go well there at all, because I just didn't really want to be there. And so what I did there was I used to throw myself into things, into my sport, and into everything that I did. You know, I became head girl prefect in a year at a school that I was at. I excelled at everything, push. And underneath it all, I was really hiding a sad young woman, and a very lost young girl. I think that, you know, and that didn't do me any favours. Trust me, I ended up in places I didn't really want to be, with people I didn't want to be with, I should never have been with. So I think that, you know, that's something that you need to take into account, is that if you are an overworker, if you work really hard and give everything you've got and then some and then more and more, why are you doing that? There's that why again. Why? What are you trying to do? Who are you trying to prove it to? And often we're trying to prove something to other people. We're trying to prove that we're good enough. Have a look at that if you are. Is your time always spent helping everyone else, but you've got no time for yourself? If that's the case, why? Why are you doing that? What's in that for you? What are you trying to avoid? It's lovely to help other people, don't get me wrong. It's wonderful to help other people, and we should help other people. Yes, of course, but we have to do it in a way that doesn't deplete our own energy and our own wellness. Okay? That's very important. We have to do it in a very ordered way. Okay. I think that the other thing I got here is, if you've got this open door policy day and night, people come and go from your house anytime, people turn up, you have to make food for everybody. You've always got people in your house, around your house. It's lovely to have friends over. It's lovely to have people there. It's lovely to have your children there and their friends there. And what does that do to you? You know, are you on this committee and this group and that group and something else? Are you the secretary of this and the secretary of that and the president of this? And so, great, wonderful that you want to do that. But, you know, are you doing it too much? Are you doing all those things to excess? And if you are, go back to the why. Why are you doing that? what is in that for you. All right. And that's really it's a very simple and it's a very easy tool to use. However, there is a downside to the why tool, is that you're the one that's asking the question and you're also the one that's answering the question. And that makes it tricky because it requires a huge level of honesty and a sort of a great lump of self-awareness. So yeah, you've got to look at that and weigh that up and go, well, am I really prepared to be honest with myself? And I have clients come to me who've got, you know, things going on like that where they're just exhausted and they've had enough and they're not feeling loved enough in their life, or they haven't got enough going on in their own personal life because their life outside of themselves is just so full, and they don't know how to stop that. They don't know how to get off the wheel like a mouse on a wheel. They're too frightened too because they don't want to disappoint people. They don't want to upset people. They don't want to let people down. And we have to work on that process of going, okay, so how are we going to extract you from this without you sort of pinging back like a rubber band and going back out there again. And you know, there are ways of doing that work very well, but the why one is very important. Okay. I just want to let you know that if you want to listen to this, we are actually on Spotify as well as Podbean now, and you can go and search for Olwen Cade Living Soulfully if you want to on Podbean or Spotify, and you can listen to these as well as the Soul's Journey podcast series that I've got up there as well. They're really interesting, talking about the soul's journey through life and from a soul's perspective, through how we decide to come here and how we choose to be here, and life and death and everything in between. I also want to tell you that we have a new series coming out shortly, a new video series, which will also be put to audio on Podbean and Spotify. It's called Soulful Connections. And I have two lovely guests in separate programs that I have spent some time with and interviewed, and they're absolutely amazing, amazing ladies who are living their dream and being very true to themselves. So watch out for that on my Facebook page coming up shortly, and on my website. You can go and have a look at those. They'll be up end of this week, next week, John. End of this week? Yep, end of this week, hopefully, if we get everything done. And I'll be putting it up on Facebook and putting it out on newsletter. So if you want to receive my newsletter, go to the website. It's on the first page, homepage, www.olwencade.com, and you can sign up for the newsletter. You can also sign up there for the podcasts that come through too. So let's have a look. Who's here? Hello, Kathleen. How are you, my dear? Thank you so much for being here. And Susie, hello, Susie. How are you, dear? Justine, Monica, Lisa. Lisa had to run. She's had to go. Well, I'm really glad you got a chance to actually spend some time with us, Lisa. And thank you all very much for being here. I hope that's helped you. It's only a little tiny snippet of a very big subject. They're always big subjects. But most importantly of all, be very kind to yourself. Take good care of yourself and put yourself first. I said to myself many years ago when I realised what I was doing and what was happening for me, that I needed to be prepared to disappoint everybody else but myself, because I'd realised that what I was really doing was disappointing myself, and I would feel miserable when I would give away my energy and give it away when I didn't really have it to give away. So you think about that. If you're prepared to disappoint everybody else but you, it doesn't mean that you're a disappointment to someone. I think that's something we have to get very clear, is that you're not a disappointment to anybody. And most importantly, the person you don't want to be a disappointment to is you. Okay? So have a good evening. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you next time on Tuesday Night Live. Bye-bye for now.